This is going to be a dating agency, but secretly they actually manufacture robots. Matches you get are robots, but you do a quiz of who you want, and so they build a robot companion for that type.
This is like a Westworld plus Her.
And then in this world, you also donate your sperm and eggs, because we're already getting genetically modified babies. So the people don't know, the humans don't know that.
I see. All companionship can be replaced, and we abstract out reproduction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 3 of Unfinished. This episode is actually the first one I recorded in Taiwan. I'd told my guest David. David was in Taiwan for just 2 weeks when I met him. He was staying at my Sharehouse, 9th floor, and he was running this leadership camp for youth around the world, essentially. And it was really cool. So I wanted to chat with them throughout the 2 weeks, but I didn't really know how. Eventually, on the last day, I managed to get Kurt, the building manager, to make an introduction. And me and David had this 15-minute conversation where we're just like, wow, you're cool. And he's like, yeah, you're cool. And it's like, yeah, we like what we're kind of doing. And so I invited him on the podcast. And this podcast is our first real interaction, right? Like before this, I've met this man for 10 or 15 minutes, had a quick conversation, been like, come on my podcast, David. And David came on my podcast. So this one was really fun because I did not know David at all before this. So this is very different to the past few ones where I have an origin story and a history with those people. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to do this one. So once again, thanks for coming on, David. And I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Improv-wise, give me 3 random thoughts from your last week, and we just frame it around that, I guess.
3 random thoughts. What does it mean to work hard? What's another thought? How polluted is Taiwan's air? And then what's another thought? The dogs here are so well groomed.
Okay. Well, let's go. Dude, I'm so tired today. I've been at this thing the whole day, but the pollution still never goes down.
Yeah. What happened with it? Have you been tracking pollution for a long time?
Yeah. I mean, that's the job here at the weather station, right? We gotta see what's happening.
That is quite right. You know what? Sometimes I just have these amnesia moments. I just don't remember that we're working at a weather station. Yeah.
I know what you mean. I wake up every day and I still can't believe it. Like the pollutants, all that is frying my brain.
Yeah. On the other hand, though, working at a weather station is quite a dream, despite my forgetful symptoms.
Yeah, the occasional times I get to be on TV to tell people about all the natural pollutants in the air and the meteorological changes that we're having here in Taiwan is great.
Yeah. But, I know that we have another section on the dogs being well groomed in Taiwan. Did you have anything on that today?
Yeah, the fur is really sticking up now, I blame it on the pollutants, but a lot of people are starting to use hairspray on their dogs.
But I think part of the reason why the pet care industry is so advanced here is because of these factors. So I think it's a pretty good thing too for the economy,
100%. Yeah. Veterinary, we just got it on another level here in Taiwan.
Yeah. You get better dogs, and somehow that improves the economy.
Yeah. Dave last week, he got bitten by a snake, but then his dog basically sucked out the poison.
You know what? I love it when dogs do that, That's why they call them man's best friend, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the power of them licking you, nothing like it.
That's right. Nothing quite like the way that another being licks us.
Exactly. I think we can leave it there for today's weather report.
Cool. Yeah, sounds great.
Nice one. Thanks. So, to get us started, do you want to just give a quick intro to yourself?
Sure. I mean, I find introductions are weird, at least in general. Part of what I do is run education programs, which is part of how we met. And in fact, I remember a few years ago, because as part of running a program, I have to introduce myself a lot to new students and whatever. And so, in fact, maybe 2 years ago, I was so frustrated with doing introductions that I straight up went, you know what? I'm going to start a new like a Substack, and then share that Substack just so that I don't have to introduce myself and just be like, just read this post. And then I don't have to write any more introductions. And ended up keeping that going for a year and a half. I still write, but much, much less so. But all of that is to say, I don't like introductions, but nonetheless, here I am.
I mean, it could be any fun, random things.
Let me see. Yeah, my name is David. I quite like learning about how learning works. I like thinking about how learning works. It's part of why I end up doing education. I spend most of my time reading or thinking or talking about how learning works. It means that I try to pick up skills myself, from juggling to guitar, to teaching the cognitive motions of how I understand learning to happen, which is mostly what I did recently in the program that I just did in Taiwan.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's some
Yeah, I mean, that's a great
Broad
intro.
strokes.
That's a great intro.
Sure.
Thinking
Well,
about thinking is
thank-
always a fun thing.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So I guess just sort of frame the picture for me. Like, how did you get into the scene? Obviously, we met randomly at my share house where you were running that program, like you mentioned. But like, how did that come about, and where did your passion for, I guess, the framing of learning come from?
Yeah, how did that come about? Where did the framing of learning come from? I never did super well in school. When I was in school, I sort of figured out how it worked, like in late high school, which allowed me to go to like a decent university. But it wasn't very. It was a very functional kind of studying. That's to say that like I went to business school, I was supposed to be an accountant, and everything I learned was for the sake of understanding how do you sort of pass each step in order to get to the next step. And so learning was like pure instrumental. You learn in order to something. There was very little actual learning involved, and so there was very little retention. I think that's like not uncommon in most people's cases. And then later on, I think how would I describe it? I think so I never did pursue the accountant path. I dropped out of university and did startups, and during that period I had to learn for still instrumental reasons, but it became a lot more intensive. The purposes were a lot more clear. So rather than like vague things like you eventually, a couple of years down the line, need to pass an accountancy exam in order to be an accountant so that you can be happy and make good income or whatever, you have to learn a lot more concretely. It was still instrumental, but it becomes a lot more, like the feedback loops are so much faster. So rather than tests, which is I suppose also some kind of a feedback loop, but it's very much like figure out how you improve your like let's say monthly active users, or let's say daily signups or something like that. You figure this. If you don't figure this out, we just don't get to move on like the right metrics so that we can like raise funds or something. And those things are a lot tighter and a lot higher stakes, and so it makes learning a lot more aggressive, which actually did in fact like make learning more interesting, if that makes sense. And I think the faster feedback loops and the more concrete like staked outputs really helped. And after doing that for a while, I felt like I've got pretty good at the motion of like, you can technically ask me to learn things and I'll be able to figure it out. But after that was when sort of things started to change after I left the startup, where I started to hang out more and more with, I guess, academics who are just genuinely incredibly good at their respective fields. Okay. And they, you know, some of the people staffed at the program that I just ran, like they taught me math like I had no idea math could even be taught that way.
Really?
Yeah. It's and that was just an example. I've noticed that like for some of these people, no matter what they touch in life, their form of learning is just so intrinsically, inherently enjoyable that I found it's like, although I felt like I was good at learning, I never quite learned it for learning's sake. And you know, everybody sort of aspires, I sure wish I liked to learn, but we rarely have like models or people that model that behavior in front of us in a way that can feel real. So it always feels like some kind of abstract aspirational goal. And so when that was like demonstrated in front of me, I'm sort of like, well, if you could learn like this the whole time, I would totally take this. And essentially that became the impetus for learning became a lot more free and enjoyable. And actually I ended up basically like restudying a lot of math that I just never really retained. And that became really fun, especially when I had quite fortunate position of being able to be like tutored by a number of these friends. Yeah.
That's awesome. Like, how did you like end up in that position of meeting all these academics? Was it just naturally from the startup, or?
Yeah, well, no. By being very homeless and lost, I think is actually the period here. This was like maybe 8 years ago, where like I dropped out. I worked on the startup for like 4 years, and then I started to, maybe there are like two lines of things that I was trying to resolve. Like doing startups was something about be mega rich and have like mega impact, and mega rich and mega impact equals people will like me, and that is like a really important thing or something. And I kind of always knew that I liked the validation, but and then as towards the tail end, I started to like, I don't know, read different things, talk to different people, and it became increasingly apparent that impact doesn't seem to need money per se. If anything, the money probably isn't the bottleneck for really important impact. Some caveats here, but whatever. And then also at the same time, as I like randomly bumbled around in different circles, I started to come across people with like decent net worth. And it was fairly obvious that I mean, we also know this, but also it helps to have some live examples that being rich does not, in fact, lead to people liking you.
Well, look at Epstein Files, right?
Yeah, I think to say the least. And there's something about like, okay, well, my two underlying motivations and primary like hypothesis for I want people to like me, and impact and money is the way to do it. Both are just like cutted by the fact that like, okay, it seems neither are especially true. That was quite disappointing because I think like it's very easy to get hooked on the kind of founder mode to just like hype. But that was somewhat disillusioning.
Yeah. I think especially if you travel, because I went through a similar thing where both with my startup and then my career, right? Like I've pivoted, I started in finance, went to tech startups, then to gaming. And then I've been jaded at like every step because it's like you have the dream that you're sold as like a child of like, oh, you can do anything, you can be anything. American dream as well if you're coming from that part of the world. Yeah. And then it happens in my case, like at least for one of the gaming things is like, and with some of the startup stuff is like I achieved everything I dreamt I could get. And then on the other side, it just felt so empty.
You still wake up the next day and still go like, what do I want to do?
Yeah. It's like, what next, right? And it's like, once you get to the top, after that, I started my like spiritual, psychological journey. I think of trying to discover.
As it happens, I think this matches a lot of cases, right? So very much in parallel, that was also the case for me. So as I started thinking about these things like, well, why do I need to be liked by people? And inevitably that lead to like, oh, turns out I think there's some like psychological stuff going on here.
Oh yeah.
And it's worth investigating.
Asian kids, let's go.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. So investigating therapy, investigating spirituality. I got quite into meditation at the time, which I still really appreciate, though like less for at least a while. I was like, enlightenment. That will do it. That will do it. So I think there's very much an like we chase goals until we inevitably start wondering about the meaning of these goals, and then inevitably reach some kind of a, I think, stage where we start necessarily reflect on what kind of meaning matters to us and whether we still want to pursue the meaning like structures that we have. I very much also feel the same in that spiritual investigation.
I guess, was it like scary for you when you got to the, you dropped out, did the startup, got to the end of the startup, and it's like, okay, what now? And then through the, like you said, the homeless / process of finding yourself, all of that, like, I mean, the human brain is not made to handle ambiguity, right?
Yeah. Well, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, for me at least, that's the scariest thing.
I totally think it's very scary. I think it is very, very scary. And it's, if anything, I think ambiguity is especially scary under something like under loneliness. Ambiguity, I think, is far less scary under not loneliness. That is to say, if you are well embedded within a social context that actually, let's like, suppose you, like, I mean, this is unfortunately not the case for many of us, but suppose magically we believed that we are deeply, deeply loved by a few of the people around us and that we love them deeply. I think ambiguity is just like meaningfully easier to navigate, which 100%. Might not remove the fear, but the fear's grip on you, I think, is very different.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. I mean, for me, it has been some of those cases where, again, it's like the meaning, the love, all that. And I'm very fortunate to have my friends, and I'm like, I would not be a sane person today without them. Because my lifestyle is also a little bit wacky in that I travel a lot, nomad, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it ends up just being this thing of, if I didn't have some kind of solid base of knowing that there's people out there that can kind of ground me, already is hard enough. Like, it would be infinitely harder without that.
Are they people similar to you in the sense that they're also nomadic, or quite different?
No. Most of them are very stable, have jobs, have lived in one place or living in one place.
Yeah. How do they view your life?
It's a little bit eccentric. To them, I think. It's different. I don't know. It's this weird thing of like, I think my life is normal now because it's what my experience is. And for them, it's really odd. But then, like, we still have a lot of common, like we went to university or school, or like I just met them, and like I've been very good at following up with my relationships and keeping them close.
That's quite the skill to have.
I hope so. I say if there's like one talent I have is that I can be a good friend.
There's a general common type of thing where it's like once you grab.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I think I've always like, partially again going back to like childhood family thing, is I've seen it from my parents of like investing in relationships.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's always been a key factor, especially with friendships. Like, I think we also grew up in a different time, right? Like when I compare when I grew up versus like how kids are growing up now, the media I consumed as a child was all about like power, friendship. You had your like Yu-Gi-Oh, Beyblade, you know, like the original animes and the good stuff. And like
Did you grow up in India?
no, not exactly. Like I was in India till I was 7. Then I moved to Germany.
Germany,
lived there,
and then UK.
and then the UK.
I see.
Yeah. So
And so you watched Yu-Gi-Oh in Hindi and then German.
I think I watched Doraemon because that was different time.
Yeah, Doraemon is
in
quite
Hindi.
the time.
And then
You
I
watched
moved.
Doraemon in Hindi. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Crazy.
Like that was the main show I think we had in India. It was like
Wow.
Doraemon and a couple of others. I can't remember all of them.
Digimon or something.
Yeah. Pokemon's a classic.
Yeah.
That's always there. And then as I went more west, I think I discovered more anime and more TV because we had a lot of like limitations in terms of what was shown. You know,
Is that right?
cross-country censorship's a whole other thing.
Actually, like there's a pull in me to reverse the interview on you and ask about how
Feel free.
localization happens for gaming.
It's a nightmare, man. Yeah, like it's because there's so many nuances, right? So even if like you get somebody that knows the language, there's a thing about like the local culture that people still don't understand, like the slang, like the lingo for certain aspects of the
Yeah,
game.
because I'm and this is like I feel so default in either North America or thinking about East Asia mode that I really miss out on a lot of the other things. Like take for example, right? Like Black Myth Wukong is a good example of like popularizing Chinese mythology and fantasy in a way that past ones hasn't yet broken out.
Yes.
And so I can sort of see how like say Americans get like, oh, what is this thing? What is this like journey to the West thing? Like what is this actually?
I mean they had a lot. I think there's been a big wave of Asian American cinema and TV, right? So I did actually see, I think there was like a Disney Plus show which was like a graphic novel retelling in modern day of Black Myth Wukong, like the whole the whole journey to the West thing.
And part of my wondering is like, but how does India like relate to this? I have no idea at all.
In terms of specifically Black Myth Wukong?
Or that was just an example. I mean, I'm happy to ask that example too.
Yeah, I mean,
for example, like my big notion is something like the Monkey King or Wukong in the Chinese mythology is very connected at its roots to Hanuman.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's like, does India just automatically? Oh yeah, like I like how would you even
don't
translate
think-
that? Would you translate it as Wukong, or would you go like, oh, let's just call him Hanuman? Like this
No.
is an example.
I think they would still retain the cultural aspect of it being like a Chinese thing, because like if you look at the game, the art, the aesthetic, it's got a very Chinese undertone, right? And that's still different. I don't think they think, oh yeah, like this is part of our culture, or we need to localize it to the point of saying that this is a version of Hanuman. I think it's more accepted about the deity side and the spirituality side because we have that culture with multiple gods than say maybe in the West where it's more like a game with like a fantasy element. I think the spiritual undertones would translate better from China to India because they have that part of the culture, right? Like you go and you pray at different temples to these gods that are either Hanuman, Ganesh, like have different like animalistic features.
Yeah.
And I think for me, one of the most interesting things, like growing up with even just like Yu-Gi-Oh and all that stuff is I was a big fan of mythology. And it was really fascinating in my life to go from being in India where Hinduism is still like a core religion to coming to the West where it's almost a mythology like ancient Greece and ancient Rome and sort of the different views that people have. Like we still have temples. But, the more I read like YA, like my Percy Jackson and all of that. Now there's books around, like Indian mythology as a fantastical element.
Made by Indians.
Made by Indians, made by like Indian Americans, made by like people also in the West. Like Percy Jackson was made by American teacher.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like you have some people that, and I think for the most part, like they respect the culture when they're looking to research and build these books.
Do you have any, because when you built games, right? When you built games and you released it probably on Steam.
Yeah, Steam and then PlayStation.
Yeah, and then like, yeah. Do you have any examples of like interesting localization anecdotes? Because like this is
Yeah, I mean, I don't specifically work in localization myself.
Okay.
I have friends that do more of that stuff, but there's like a lot of little segments that we've seen. So like one of my favorite games, Persona 5, which is like a Japanese game, right?
I
love that game.
Yeah.
And like there was a lot of like they did a good job in terms of localizing it, but like Japan is a very secular culture. And so when they translate it abroad, oftentimes a lot of these countries like localization comes last, right? Because when the developers are making the games, they're making it for themselves. I think that's something that a lot of people don't always understand is like a lot of media that you put out there is media that you built for yourself, especially for a game. Because a game is like a nightmare to build, right? Like it's a miracle that any game has ever been built in the world because it's so messed up. Like as a product, it's infinitely harder than anything in tech I've worked on.
Which I'm gonna jump again a little bit, but I think it's called Genie, right? Like the latest thing.
The Google model.
What do you make of it?
I think it's still very rudimentary. I don't think it's at the point. So like, you're looking at a lot of physics obstacles and things and the design elements, right? Like for me, my, I guess, not hot take, but version of what I think with AI is going to be is that the factor of design is going to become a lot more interesting and a lot more important. Because like anyone can go out and vibe code something. And I think from the side of computer science, I think it's worth knowing the baseline of how to code and understand the logic.
Sure.
But beyond that, like, I think vibe coding gets you pretty far. What you don't know is how to build for people a lot of times, or how to build products.
Which also goes kind of back to what you were saying, which is like at the end of the day, many developers make games for themselves.
Yeah.
And that naturally requires an aesthetic sense. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's just something that comes, one, with time, with practice. Like, that doesn't disappear, right? Like, I would love to be great at, like, photography or designing things, but I haven't spent nearly enough time to get to a point where I think I'm good. Like, I have my own sense of aesthetic, but I know it's, like, there's a lot of things I miss when I speak to my like creative friends or artist friends on that side. And so I think design is going to become like hugely important in how people use this technology. So I feel like that's going to be one of the distinguishing factors going forward for games, like specifically on game design, but any kind of product really. It's going to be how is it made to make people feel good about using it. And so yeah, like right now I'm on my like design side of things of being like, oh, I want to be a better designer so I can build things and like have all these ideas come out naturally. But yeah, going back on localization, I think there was a couple of points where Persona 5, there was, because Japan is very secular, they didn't have a lot of connections with different parts of the world. So one is like, a lot of the localizations that aren't in English are secondary, right? When you look at the world, because those markets are smaller.
Sure.
So it's more like a nice to have, and only like big AA, AAAs can really afford it. Like AI might make it a little bit cheaper.
And what would it mean? Like, it would mean that if I was in, I don't know, like, say India, I would end up buying an English version of Persona 5?
Usually.
Okay.
I mean, India has like the world's largest English-speaking population. So it's actually easier to communicate in English in India than it is because they have different languages based on where you are. So yeah, English would be sort of the go-to there. Like, it's very rare to see a game that's been translated full into like Hindi.
Wow. My impression, back from like the 90s and 2000s is that usually you count, like, I think it's less so the case these days, but oftentimes like fans put into work to actually do the localization.
Yeah. I mean, that happens.
I guess I would have imagined that more of the games would be like manually translated by fans, and thus you would have more Hindi versions.
Well, it's so like it happens with comics and books because those you can have piracy sites or something else where you can put it up. A game is trickier because if you have it on PlayStation or Xbox, that's a gated ecosystem. So you can't really put on like a plugin that will translate it. On PC, you can hypothetically do that, but again, you're launching it from a launcher like Steam. And so a third-party software that you have to go in and mod the whole thing, that's a technical hurdle that most people just can't be bothered. I feel like eventually what we're going to get is more AI translations in games. Yeah. So a lot of my friends are very worried about their localization jobs. But at the same time, right now, it's not there. Same with things like Genie, because they just can't capture local nuances. You need to translate like jokes or certain elements, right? Looking at Persona 5, a little bit light spoilers for people that haven't played it, but there's a lot of pseudo-political themes, right? About one, loneliness, about Japanese culture, like a statement on that, on work, on life, but with like the different characters they explore.
Both Persona and Yakuza are really good examples of like, it really assumes that you know Japanese culture. Yeah. And because it's so unapologetic about that, that's why it has a very distinct flavor to non-Japanese players as well. Yeah.
100%. But then like, say, my experience of it as somebody who grew up with anime, who's been to Japan and sort of understands the subtext of that society is very different than somebody like coming in and they're just like from the West and are like, I don't really quite understand or relate to this, right?
What an incredible cultural export win.
Yeah, 100%.
Like an entire world, like a huge generation of international people just go like, yeah, anime for sure, I get it. Yeah.
I mean, it's huge now. Yeah. It's huge now. Yeah. I still remember like I was the outcast in school.
Yeah, I remember being bullied for these two. Yeah.
I was like, damn, I was born too early. I would have been the cool kid now. I'm into like math and anime and computers and like all this shit that I thought,
Yeah.
oh, you're a nerd and a
Well,
geek.
I mean, another way to look at it is like I think it's actually a blessing to watch to be a part of a rise, if that makes sense. Like we started out
Yeah.
at the bottom, right? Like being nerds were like straightforwardly, unambiguously an insult.
Yes.
And nowadays it's hardly it's I wouldn't say it's swung all the way to the other end, but it's like not remotely an issue. And people self-identify proudly. People even joke about it in a self-praising kind of way.
100%.
And like seeing that rise is, and not just seeing it, but like being a part of it because we self-identify is
Yeah.
also quite a trip too. Who knows? Maybe it'll come down again.
Maybe. I mean, it's both cool and like there's two parts of it for me. One is the grading part of like like you have the I'm the OG feeling for one.
I was here before you guys
with
were.
more ego, more
Uh-huh,
ego.
uh-huh.
But then there's also the element of like it has risen, and I can see it a lot with like the Gen Z. I think I have some envy there because I'm like people that are my age or like a lot of my friends. Like some of them are friends because we kind of grew up with that ecosystem. We were in that kind of close community. But for others, it's just like, this is a part of my life these guys will never understand. Whereas like, if I look at my cousin who's 10 years younger, and I chat with him, like this is something I can very easily relate to with him and all his friends because they've grown up with it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow, like it would have been great to just be like a normal kid with like this hobby that was kind of mainstream in a way, that I just felt like I belong in this community that is more expansive than what I had growing up. So I mean, I'm really happy that it's at a point where it's accepted and that I can connect with people and like that's like common language. But at the same time, I'm like, damn, I wish I had that.
Yeah, I mean, there's this very interesting dynamic where it's like, have you heard about this phrase that's something like, remember to gatekeep your community?
No.
Yeah, so the story behind it is something like, so I like Warhammer.
Oh, nice.
40K specifically. And basically, like, sometimes when you peruse its forums and whatever, they'll say, like make sure to gatekeep your community. And the general notion there is something like if you compare to, say, something like Marvel, where you've hit not just, like well-known status, you've hit, like, ubiquity practically.
Yeah.
Right? And so what ends up happening is that, like, it simultaneously gives you access, but also dilution. Like, you just, like, mimetically speaking, you just can't retain the nuances very, very well when you spread, especially when you spread very fast.
Yeah.
And so the kind of, like, more hardcore fans then feel like they can no longer actually enjoy the community because the nuances cannot actually be appreciated. And so then is born this, like, counter meme, which is, like, actually opening your subculture is a bad idea. Don't welcome new people. You want to gatekeep it so that you can retain. And this is like a two polarities that are in tension with each other, right? Like, if you gatekeep too hard, then you'll eventually die. If you open it all, then you eventually, like, fall to entropy or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that, though, it's not just anime or culture, that's just the world, right?
Also that,
like,
yeah, that's right.
For me, I think this is how I framed AI when it first came out, and a lot of people were kind of fear-mongering, is like, in a way, it democratizes things that were gatekept. Like, it democratizes knowledge to a certain point. Like, there's obviously depth that you need to get after that. But it democratizes getting into something a lot more, right? Whether it's an educational field, learning.
Yeah.
You know, even like I can ask you about anime and get to a point of baseline knowledge on what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Like with Grok, I can literally just go, what's the sentiment of X on Twitter? And I'll get something in the last like month of how people are feeling. So it's just a really good tool to democratize a lot of things, which like for me in human history has just been, you've gatekept knowledge. And whether it's Warhammer, whether it's anything, these communities are built by gatekeeping that knowledge, right? Now it's like this open field, which I'm very interested in how that's going to like impact society and people if they can kind of not take the hard way of like investing hundreds and thousands of hours to get to a baseline level of knowledge that other people have already built by saying, oh, I've worked that hard to get here. And I think that's going to be a new way then of gatekeeping anything, right? Like, I'm wondering what that looks like. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
No, not quite. Like, I think when we bring up the kind of societal impact of AI, I often just get pretty concerningly fuzzy about the whole thing. Like, you know, like the species has never seen a shift in its like mental environment like this, where like whether it's the internet or anything before, we can speed things up, but we haven't quite like replaced entire cognitive loops or something. And so yeah, it's like it's very hard to imagine how communities form when, let's say, like AI is ubiquitous. Like, did you see the notebook thing? Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Open
yeah.
claw and everything.
Like that's a really like on the other end of the extreme, you can have like well, gatekeep humans, right?
Yeah.
But between gatekeeping humans and gatekeeping AI exists this middle ground, which is a very very large middle ground, where like we don't have the means to discern. Like, remember when it was like not that many years ago when we can still go like, oh, you know, there's still the Turing test that like the AI has not passed. We blew right past that quickly, and so it's like in this massive middle ground exists like an unknown kind of like community formation in an environment where it is unclear whether you're engaging with a bot or with a human, and that feels so strange to me, because it's like the more you think about that community as real, the more you're sort of implying personhood on AI. And that feels like a very, it's not at all clear to me that assigning personhood is the right thing. It's also not clear to me not assigning personhood is the right thing. It's also unclear to me whether like personhood is even the right like category to think here. And so like if we imagine a community of 100 where it's something like 1 human and 99 bots, is that a community? If we think 100 humans, that's definitely a community. What about 99? Like where along the spectrum? Yeah. Right? Like something here is very funky. Yeah. And the funkiest part of that funkiness is like just which is why I said like I just end up getting this like very uncertain fuzz where it's, or like fuzziness of like, I have no idea how to think about that, but it's happening anyways. Yeah. And I guess we'll discover it one way or another.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's been super popular media, right? Like I was a big Westworld fan. Westworld.
Right.
Exploring, I guess, I don't know, the mind in a way, and what is sentience, what is not, what is being human, right? Like we have so many like different constraints of this and that, right? Certainly. But everyone is different in terms of what they feel like as being human. Yeah. So no, I'm really fascinated to see where we go. I had a semi-dystopian book idea that I was exploring. Those two the other day.
I didn't. So you also write?
I try to write. Cool. Yeah, I like writing. I read a lot. I love freaking reading, and just writing is one of those things that I'm like trying to do more of and have always wanted to do, but you know, the mind keeps telling me I'm busy. Yeah. No, but there's a couple of stories I'm like, oh, this is a really cool idea. I want to write it because it's fun. And it's into things that I'm interested in right now, like the dating and mating crisis. So I had this idea for a book, which is just, we're going to get to a point of robotics where you can make a person. Like you can basically just get a body. That's not the hard part, right? You can synthesize something with robotics. Sure. Have their Anthropic or GPT brain, and you're going to have a quiz before, I'm looking for XYZ. So the idea was that this is going to be a dating agency, right? But secretly, they actually manufacture robots.
Where the matches that you get are actually
are robots, but you do a quiz of who you want, and so they build a robot companion for that type.
This is like a Westworld plus her.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. And then it's also a thing of, in this world, you also donate like your sperm and eggs, because we're already getting like genetically modified babies. So it's like the people don't know, the humans don't know that. I see.
All companionship can be replaced, and we abstract out reproduction.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because you can have test tube babies, virtual wombs, all that kind of stuff. You just go inject like this robot with eggs.
Explain the part that's semi-dystopian.
Oh no, it's dystopian. It's dystopian.
I'm like, dystopian, sure, but where's the semi part here?
No, I was softening it a bit, but it's very dystopian. But I feel like that is where we're kind of going to at this point with what's happening. Yeah. And I don't know if I should be scared by like how real that future seems to me.
I mean, I think there's like Black Mirror captured a very significant cultural moment, right? Like especially in the context of now, it sort of hits a note or hits a chord in the I don't know how popular it is in the East, but in the Western psyche about like, there's something here that feels sufficiently disturbing that we're watching it almost like in a way that's like a slow motion car crash that we don't. But car crash connotes like implies something bad, but mostly I think it's like a slow motion something for which we can't even understand. Yeah,
but it's also a thing of like we see it, and it's like this weird thing of like, you know, it's kind of gross, you know, it's kind of ugly in a way, but you're also like intrigued, right? You're just like
there is morbid curiosity in the whole thing. Yeah. And then there's also like how many, like in what ways can our minds reasonably relate to the situation without going mad, let's say.
Yeah.
Right? And I think morbid curiosity is one way to at least allow some degree of sanity while going like, what's going on here?
Yeah. I mean, it's also a thing for me in a way. I don't know why I feel sometimes this media does is it sort of desensitizes you, right? Because you see it once and you're horrified, but then you see it again, or you see it in another framing, and then you see it happening in the real world, and you're like, well, like
apparently the world is like this. Yeah.
I've already like consumed media that I know this is real. My brain is not getting hit for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is also the same with like technological change for me. Is like anytime you try to leap like 100 steps, it fails, right? You look at like Google Glass 10 years ago. Now, if you get Google Glass today, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, let's go, let's buy it." You got all the Ray-Bans, you got all this. Like privacy is not a concern anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like
I
the
remember
incremental changes.
There's like
time.
many one of the most like funny, but also funny in that morbid kind of way. Reading about like people who cared about how to secure AI in the event of like misaligned AI doing harm and whatnot. And there was like, especially this would be like on the order of 10 years ago, where there's often the talks of like, how we want to keep the AI in a box, don't connect it to the world, and people were thinking about scenarios in which an intelligent AI could, or specifically a super intelligent AI, can like reasonably convince a human to like hook it up to the grid. And now we have, I just saw a headline yesterday, which is like, an AI paid me to put this sign up.
I saw that. Yeah,
it's like we are fighting to connect them to.
The
funny part is like when we were originally thinking about harm, we were thinking about like how that the human is surely the reasonable agent thinking about how to contain the bot. Whereas like instead, turns out most of the issue just comes from the human, just like, oh yes, plug it in everything. I'll use it in every way. And it's just like, isn't it interesting that like turns out that was somehow not so highlighted and yet became so much more highlighted. Yeah.
100%. I mean, look at like the Maltberg example, right? Like that is what it is. It's an open source project that you're giving it control of your life, so it does all the admin work and like everything for you, right? It's like it can control my life, it can do whatever. And anyone's like, oh, I found a new case, it's gonna buy me this, so it's gonna go build me that, or it's gonna like do this for me, and I don't need to think about it. And I'm just like, wow, you're just like literally handing over your life to an AI with like, and these are like smart people, right? To set it up requires you to be quite entrepreneurial to a degree of like, I need certain machinewear, I need the hardware.
Your agency to remove your own agency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is so fascinating that people are like, yeah, let's go, we want more Maltberg, let's go. Yeah. I'm just like, because I was actually here in Taiwan. There's a couple of people who actually work in this place, XYC, that kind of thing. We actually had an open claw party last Friday, where the whole point was with like 15 of us was to set up our own version of Maltberg in our computers. So we were all like getting together to be like, okay, let's get this set up and like debug it for everyone, and then have it, and then we can play with it and do all this cool stuff. And like I was speaking, like some people have given it more access versus others. That's some restrictive, but like these are really smart people. And they're like, we're gonna give it access so it can like run my life. And I'm just like, wow. And I also want to do that, to be fair. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of admin work.
Like, part of this thing is that it's so understandable somehow.
Yeah.
Yet we also have questions about it. And there's also an inevitability to it all. And there's like, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I am actually curious to get your take on, since you teach, and especially like with this, the Compass thing, you've had sort of students in the younger generations. Like, there's so much media out there around Gen Zs. What I've found with like my Gen Z friends, or the ones I've met, is they're actually the opposite of how the media portrays them a lot of time, in that a lot of them aren't on like TikTok or Instagram. Like they're more conscious about, going out into the real world, or like, being touch like touch grass. Like they have their own terms for this kind of thing, right? Or there's like, I think there was a recent one where they're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna like go and stare at a wall for like an hour, and that's gonna be like brain training for us.
That's so basic.
And things like, exactly, right? And I'm just like, you have all these things coming out, which I'm like, no millennial ever. I know no millennial that's like, yeah, I'm gonna like put down my phone and just chill for a bit.
Yeah.
Like, that now goes to the influencer, like hippie type of vibe.
Yeah.
Whereas like, yeah, and I know people who are like 20, 22, they're like, I want to like, I don't want to be on Instagram. I don't want to be on TikTok. I'll use it as maybe messaging.
Yeah.
And I want to go outside. I want to experience. And like, I don't bother posting or doing anything if you're not around me.
Yeah.
I guess what is since you're teaching people like that, what's been your experience with them?
Well, I mean, to even just start, I think like never mind even Gen Z, because Gen Alpha is here. Gen Alpha is turning 15, I think like next year or this year or something like that. And part of this is relevant is because I also teach high schoolers. And so it'll be like Gen Alpha coming into the classroom for me. And both are very salient. And I feel like I am often a bit of a downer on these things, but my impression is that education is probably an industry that feels this more as a kind of like difficult to manage and by default a probably negative thing or harmful thing or something, which is to say that like there are two massive forces, right? Which is like people like Gen Alpha is the one that we talk about. Like when we talk about iPad babies, that's Gen Alpha. Like they are the ones that are currently in school and are coming into, let's say, like my programs where it's like 15 or older, and like that is straightforward. Like, so here's a real question, a real conversation I had with a friend of mine who like did masters in education in Stanford and now is a teacher. And I remember asking her something like, or I remember sharing with her something like, hey, you know, I found that just descriptively, like no, with no offense meant, but like simply descriptively, it helps me a lot when I teach to simply imagine that they're all addicts on some level.
Okay.
Like it's just more explanatory. If somebody gets like agitated and go like, hey, like, or like if somebody gets distracted, rather than me getting upset, I'll like say, why is Billy so dumb or something like that, or so impatient or something like that. If I just simply assume like, can I just like suppose that Billy was actually an addict, would his behavior be explainable? It's like suddenly, actually, yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
And so I then said to this friend, it's like, yeah, that's kind of, and then she was like, yeah, that seems to make sense. And it kind of struck me that we just casually had a conversation and had casual agreement about like declaring like an addictive kind of behavior across the board as a useful way to teach. That's a really messed up statement to just casually make. And part of the thing here is that like, what do we do with it is a big unknown question. And then there's also the fact that like, I as an educator necessarily need to change my program design if I assume. So for one thing, it's like my programs are not rehabs. So we cannot like, it is not really our place to make interventions on this. But the design of a program necessarily needs to change if, let's say, you think like your audience, if they are a healthy, regular people, whatever that means, versus addicts, you necessarily need to design your program differently. And so I am faced with the choice of like, okay, well, how should I change my design? And one axis of which is I basically have to assume all of them are on some level like addicts to something. In fact, one class, or it's more of an activity that we do sometimes, is like, we will actually teach you about how dopamine works, and one of the ways we teach you that is to take your phone away for an afternoon, and we reflect on what that's like afterwards. And part of that is just like, but that's exactly right? Yeah. Like, it's just so fundamentally rooted in their lives that they are for me, mostly I have this like great compassion and empathy, but it's like, how do you even live with that? Like every day you're just like trained into scrolling, you know, whether it's touch grass or brain rot or doom scrolling, like all of these terms are the younger generation's direct reflection of like, this is what's happening, so we're giving names to them. Yeah.
It's the lived experiences for sure. Yeah, I guess then if you treat them as addicts, have you found that makes the way you educate them more effective?
No, I think it usually works out to be more of a blocker of different kinds. But let me add more nuances here, because I do think it's like, on the one hand, maybe some 90+% of people could maybe apply to this. There's some like 5-10% minority that like rockets in terms of how they like. It's almost like there's a kind of like cognitive divergence, if you will. Okay. There's the majority of people who kind of falls into whatever equivalent of sort of like doom scrolling with LLMs or something like that. And then there's like a minority that actually like I've seen some students who can like self-teach years of academic content in like a very short amount of time by just because of course you can. Why wouldn't you be able to? Like, if you're smart in how you're using AI now, you can in fact just self-tutor incredibly well. And so this divergence is part of what's worrying, because it quite literally creates like, you know, especially if you like extend this by say 1,000 years, the scary thought here is something that like it could in fact just become two almost different species, if you will. Whether we even get to that 1,000 year, I don't know. But the point here is that from an education design point of view, it becomes very confusing because you don't really know who is like that. And you want more people to be able to leverage things well. Variance in the classroom is just far greater. Or something like the absolute variance in a classroom is greater, but the mode is very large, if you see what I mean. So most people are low variance, but a few people are very, very different. And together you form a set that is super high variance and quite difficult to design for, right?
Interesting. I think that's been my problem as well with education. Our education system is like how I find corporate work, which is like one size fits all. And I'm a night owl. I hated waking up at like 6, 7 a.m. to go to school and shit. And I was like, I was a zombie for half the day. I mean, I loved some subjects, learning and all of that. But because it's like kind of defined to mean, like you're saying, you're not really hitting either extreme. And most people don't even really sit in the middle, right? We just kind of average it down to the middle. So in a way, for me at least, education just doesn't end up serving anyone. Or I think the point that I would get from school would be that you should make learning itself fun, right? Like the whole point of school for me is learning to learn, not learning to memorize.
One would hope. So,
but that's not how we're taught. We're taught by learning to memorize a lot. At least like the way I was. I don't know if systems are changing now. Yeah, well,
I mean, to be clear, I think we try, but it's sort of like there are quantitative improvements that are being made, but ultimately I think it's something qualitative here. We just haven't really figured out how to deliver education at scale in a way that is compatible to learning to learn rather than learning to memorize. Because learning to memorize is very easy to deliver at scale.
Yes.
But learning to learn is very hard to deliver at scale. One could dream that maybe AI could in theory be able to do this, but at least for now we don't have a better mode. And so even if we try to improve things in school, like a lot of the interventions end up being like the fundamental paradigm is still learning to memorize, but let's include a couple components that's not. That's almost like trying to, like, I don't know, squirt a few bit of water onto a small fire or something like that. Does it help? Of course it does. But like, does it address the fundamental fact that there's like a small fire? Like, not really.
Yeah, because I think if I'm looking back at school or any points where I was in like my education journey, I think the ones that, because I've always been very curious, and I think most people inherently are just curious.
I totally think so.
I just think a lot of times school didn't reward that curiosity.
An animal would die without curiosity. It's like a necessary component of their survival.
No, 100%. And I think I kind of wish schools would get to a point of like both rewarding curiosity, but also making it kind of like playful too. And enjoyable, right? Like if you can get to a point.
And here's the interesting question, right? Like, let's now imagine, let's say, 30 kids in front of us. Right? And you want some means of managing them, but also you want them to be curious. Curiosity is naturally like non-linear and dynamic, ever-changing, and so it's like a very entropic kind of phenomenon. Right? The 30 kids, if you give them maximum curiosity, they'll just probably start picking at the different things in the room and entertaining themselves, and probably very quickly will be like, I want to go outside. I don't want to be in this room. And so how do you effectively deliver an experience where all of the experience wants to broadly diverge from each other? And then I think it's broadly speaking, like, people want to like form collaborative experiences around these, but ultimately that might cluster the groups. It doesn't change the fact that you still have multiple nodes that wants to diverge as they explore.
No, I mean, hypothetically, in my mind, it's like, I make sense, because like, I know me. But when I think about, 30 kids, I'm like, it's such a hard problem, because they're all going to think differently. And I'm not going to be able to do anything for each of them. I'm like, if I be like, go have fun, play, they're just going to go wild.
That's right.
And then they're eventually going to like default to the baseline of like,
that's right,
I'm bored, I don't really want to do anything, I want to cheat, or I just want to, move on with my life.
Of course.
And I'm like, because that's sort of the interesting thing, right? In society, almost we've like made it a point of cheating is rewarded.
I mean, in part because trying to get through these very gameable steps are part of the game that you're forced to play. And so, in fact, cheating is a functional way to do that. It's hard to even blame them, I think.
No, 100%. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how you would make a course for an individual, right? Like you said, AI might be a thing, especially if iPad babies, they have this whole digital life. That's their personality in a way. If you can understand their personality, you can tailor content to them, which has interesting ramifications depending on who ends up with that material, right, at the end of the day.
Well, a potential leverage in the statement that you made is something like noticing something like, how do you plan a course for that? The very word course is itself like the subtly shackling word or something like that, right? Course implies some kind of delivery in a way where it's like, they are supposed to go through a particular path or something like
Yeah.
that, right? Whereas, I don't know, like, if we drop all kinds of incentive problems, social gridlock, blah, 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 for a moment, one could imagine a situation where children exist in some social context where there are many experts of different kinds are populated in, like, imagine a small village for now, or let's say we're near Ximen. Let's say just this like 2 kilometer radius area. There are different experts populated around the area, and they're all equipped to take on anywhere between like 1 to 4 youth or children or whatever as part of their daily lives, right? Which is technically true. Like there does exist, in fact, many different kinds of experts within a 2 kilometer radius who could, in theory, take on 1 to 4 children or youth or something like that. Like it's latently and then I think, and then you just let the kids freely do whatever they want, and ostensibly you can inject some kind of an evaluation mechanism, maybe by AI or by humans, just to see like, okay, you've fooled around for the past 3 months. What have you learned? I think that ostensibly could turn out more whole and well-learned and interesting young adults than, let's say, the school part. There's lots of downsides with this. In large part, it's just because of gridlock. Like, it's very hard to coordinate these populated experts. It's also very hard to coordinate the children and their parents that want to do so. And now we have to like implicate all of the global economics, like GDP and arms races and stuff like that. But at least like as a pure hypothetical imagery, I think that probably just works.
But then wouldn't that feel too controlled?
What would be controlled?
Like, if you're saying you've got gridlock, you've got people in certain aspects, how do they get to choose, right? Like, how do they
that's exactly what I mean. Yeah, it does feel too controlled. The imaginary world that I described is not impossible, but it is currently fairly intractable.
Yeah, and going to the free will argument, in a way, it boxes you in a little bit. And the Western part of me is very much just, no. Like, that's going against my inherent right to free will and free speech and all of that.
So what would the Western mind want here, in your imagining?
See, that's the thing. That's where I'm like a little bit, I guess, confused within myself. It's like I can understand it. I feel like that would be almost the easier way to live, right? Because a lot of times it's the choice and the analysis paralysis that gets you. But at the same time, there's just an inherent part of me, like, I want the freedom to choose. I want the freedom to explore. I want the freedom to be able to say, okay, I've check this path, I want to check that path, I want to check that, I want to find what's right for me specifically.
Yeah, and I think maybe for both, let's say, you and I, who have, like tried enough things that we probably have some familiarity with how to do so, like maybe projecting a little onto you here, is like, presumably, if you are interested in something, you have the ability to, in fact, navigate within a 2-kilometer radius.
Yes.
At least metaphorically speaking, to kind of find out, oh, what do I want to learn? Who and where can I learn these things?
Yeah.
And then actually just pursue. And that freedom, that agency is so wonderful. It makes life a lot more interesting.
Yes, but I have to caveat that even though I'm very used to that, I still find it scary. Right? Because I'm leaving a safe haven every time. So at this point, I travel to a lot of the same countries where I'm like, nomading or whatever else. Yeah. Meeting a lot of similar people. Yeah. Like, I have my comfort zone in the types of people that I know I will engage with. Yeah. Now, that doesn't say that I don't want to stretch myself and push myself outside of my comfort zone. Yeah. But I think I've naturally come to a point where I've done it so much that I've kind of desensitized myself to it. Yeah. But even then, there is still the friction of that when I'm meeting new people or when I'm in certain situations or in certain places. Yeah. I have my past experiences or like past simulations of how things will go. Yeah. And sometimes that will still stop me from going to
I so empathize. I mean, to even just make this very... is it meta or grounded? One of those things. Where I think in like education they call this something like cohort-based learning and whatever, or something like that. But essentially, it's like it feels especially scary alone, and which kind of full circles towards what we were talking about at the beginning. Because like for me, for example, I think I mentioned at the beginning, like, oh, this is my first time doing a podcast with like proper equipment and whatever. And it's like at the beginning, I'm also kind of a little nervous, right? And it's like for me, there's a kind of, when this finishes, I'm like really excited to tell my collaborators, my girlfriend, like, hey, I just did this thing. Here are all of my experiences around it, and then hearing their reflection and support, not necessarily in the enabling sense, but like lovingly critiquing or lovingly supporting, whatever form, where love is the consistent thing and like critique or support is the, depending on the context, thing. It's like my knowing that is an option available and waiting for me makes trying something new that much more comfortable.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
I think the community part definitely helps.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah, I think
that's
it helps
always
a
the
lot.
thing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me as well, I think the fact that like, there's a piece of me that's like, I come back here because I have my friends here. I go to, I don't know, Korea or back to London, and I'm just like, I'm looking forward to meeting those people and having them like share my stories,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
I think
even
that's
just
like,
just the organic. Hey, what have you been up to?
yeah.
Already changes the dynamic here. Yeah.
Yeah, just having like I think the happiest times that I have is when like I wake up and I'm like, oh, a friend has just messaged me to ask me how I'm doing.
Mm.
You know, like that's just something that I feel is missing so much in our world, and it's like it takes you, I don't know, 5 seconds to do of being like, oh hey, I remember this person. Let's just message being like, hey,
it seems
how's
like
it going?
you've mentioned towards the beginning that this is pretty natural for you, right? Like, did you
Yeah.
learn this, or was it always in fact just natural? For you?
I think I learned it. Like I grew up. I had a huge. So I mean, when we were talking, and I told you like my mission was to partially like help solve loneliness and go towards that. I mean, a lot of that comes from me feeling that, right? Because like when I grew up, I was isolated in that I went from India to Germany to the UK.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that was sort of inherently just like I didn't like feeling lonely. I didn't like feeling like an outsider. And so when I managed to form my friendships, and because I was sort of an outcast and my hobbies were in sort of the outcast realm of like anime, games, movies, like whatever, the people I kind of naturally gravitated towards, we had sort of deeper connections because like we were a limited few, right? It wasn't like I've never good in a crowd with a huge number of people. So when it's like there's 2-3 people that we connect and like we just go deep, that just ends up adding that sense of comfort. And I think for a lot of people, because I've like grown up with that, I tend to go deep and like I'm comfortable at this point with myself to know what I like, what I dislike, and like have those conversations with people. I think a lot of people just get surprised, especially more I've found in like Eastern cultures, but it's without generalizations, it's true everywhere. I think a lot of people just, when you look at friendships now, have very superficial relationships. And like for me, I treat friendship as an actual relationship, you know. And like even in school, it was weird.
I really vibe with this.
Yeah, so it was really weird for my friends when I said I had a friend hierarchy, where I was like, I have like my top set of like these are my close like ride or die.
These relationship really matters to me. I know that I'm like putting a lot of resources in them.
Yeah. And then it's like, you know, then I have like my normal friends, my acquaintance friends, my like work friends, whatever, like all these tiers.
Yeah.
And some people found that really weird.
Yeah.
But I find it weird that friendship is this catchment term that sort of encompasses all of your like relationships that aren't romantic in a sense. In a way.
I think maybe even like as I'm just listening to you here, part of what's making me think perhaps what makes the hierarchy thing uncomfortable is often the connotation. Like we don't like to be labeled. That is, that we don't like to be squished in a label. We especially don't like to be squished into a label that it implicates lower than. Right?
Yes.
Now, but I think I'm kind of, not that it would be that easy to achieve this, but at least conceptually speaking, if there was a way to indicate that the labels are themselves dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Like let's say, for example, I put you on my 3rd tier of friends or something like that, but somehow magically you fully know that is a dynamic thing. Who knows? By tomorrow it could move up, or down, or whichever, because it's inherently a reflection of how our relationships evolve.
100%.
And maybe then actually the hierarchy thing wouldn't be so contentious in the way that it's
yeah. I mean, for me, it's always been fluid, and like I've told my friends, it's been fluid because people like over time, like you said, you grow together with some, you grow apart from others.
Yeah.
Right. That's just a journey each of us is on. And as much as I'd like to cultivate everyone to grow together with me, that's just not going to happen. And so it is fluid, and there's people that have shifted around where I'm like, okay, there was one point in life where we were like best friends. I was always messaging, always looking after you. 10 years later, we'll maybe talk now and then. It's like more casual, like, hey, how you doing? What's up?
Yeah.
And that's kind of it, right? One of my favorite stories to tell is one of my current best friends. We went to school together, but we weren't that close. Like we were like acquaintances, is how I would classify us in schools. Like we were friends. We're in the same like homeroom class, but we don't do the same subjects. We have very little interaction apart from maybe like 20 minutes a day. In a class of like 30 other kids. Now, I graduate, he graduates from school, we go separate unis, separate lives, have not thought about this person for like 5 or 6 years. One day I'm walking home from work on Waterloo Bridge in London, and I just get this message on Facebook. Now, I'm very, I don't know, pedantic or whatever, or neurotic, in that like I like to read my messages and respond to them immediately.
Wow.
So that I can just like not think about it. I'm just like, I want it out of my plate. Like if I know it's there and I've read it, then it's just gonna take up brain space and energy that it doesn't need to. So I text really badly in that like I just do minimum effort, whatever's gone, you know, I prefer an in-person. But you'll get your response immediately, even if it's not great. So I get this message while I'm walking home from work, and it's this guy who I haven't thought about for years, and he's just like, hey, are you on Waterloo Bridge by any chance? And I'm like, the fuck? What is happening here? Like, why am I getting a random person messaging me about being on Waterloo Bridge? But I'm like, okay, yeah, I am. And it turns out he's on the other side, right? I'm on the right side. There's these two roads. And he's on that side. And he saw me somehow from there, which is like a good, like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 meters difference. And this is, again, somebody you haven't met in years.
It sure is good that you're the type to respond quickly.
And I'm
Otherwise,
like,
you just did this and it kept walking that way.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, I am. How do you know? He's like, I just saw you. And I was like, the fuck? That's so crazy. And then, ended up, because I was going to dinner with a friend, so I just invited him along. I was like, yo, just come dinner. It's crazy that, like, we just met. And he's like, he tells the story. He's like, the reason he knew it was me is because I apparently wear distinctive pants. And he was like, oh, I looked at everybody else. I used to wear even more colorful clothing, I'll say. I think I was wearing like neon green pants or something. And he's like that for some reason just triggered him being like, oh yeah, it's Jay. I'm like, okay, I get it. But yeah, so like then we went to dinner and like, you know, we connected in a way that in school we just couldn't, because I think we'd both just changed in our uni experiences, our life experiences, and like become slightly different people, where we were now in a place that we were kind of going on the same path. Whereas in school, it was like, oh, I'm going into like math, econ. He's going into like design and like that kind of thing. And that's like a whole world apart. So then it just became this thing. We naturally had this friendship. And today, almost, I think it's 8 years since then, or almost 10 years. Yeah. We're like best friends. And that relationship has just like evolved and grown. And it was just simple from him messaging me and taking that chance. Yeah. And me receiving it and being like, okay, let's invest and see. Yeah. So I think for me, it's always been just be open. Like even with you, right? I was like, cool people, they're doing interesting things. I want to chat with this guy. Yeah. So it's just always been about like openness to experiences and people. And I think that's what I try to just bring when I meet people.
Well, that makes me wonder, when you reached out, like, to Kurt, right, probably, and like, oh, what are they doing here? Like what you were saying earlier, when you were trying, did you feel any fear when, like, were nervous?
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh, maybe they reject me, right? Rejection is really scary. Or they'd be like, oh, no, this is just, like, some random dude. Like, because you guys were there for 2 weeks.
That's right.
And so, like, I did chat with a couple of the kids. I tried to chat with some of the other teachers, but it felt like a very secular group in a way, right? Because
by secular, you mean like siloed or something?
Yeah. Because you had one part of the building to yourselves, and then you'd like kind of go in and out, but it would be very much like, it's hard to jump into a group dynamic.
For sure. Because so much of this is about execution, right? Like, you could be the most genuine and curious, but because precisely the space that we're creating is a very isolated one, if you had done that, I would have to then ask you to leave. And then that would actually miss the opportunity for us to connect.
No, exactly. So I was also like, okay, maybe I just wait till the end. So that's why I asked Kurt, because I don't want to go straight into your space and be like, hey, I want to chat, or anything like that. And so I'm like, okay, if I get the chance, I would like to. Yeah. And I'll let the guy I know who can maybe connect us know. And if I see an opportunity, if you guys are alone or if there's something, then I'll come by and say hi and see where that goes. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't want to like force myself in, because I feel like that's the worst way, right?
Or at least like for me, it would be like, it would take incredibly high skillfulness to be able to force oneself in a way that's actually generative for the context and for oneself. And like, sometimes we just don't need to take those bets.
Yeah, pretty much. For sure.
It was, and I think on the mirror side is something like, you know, I'm tired from running the program as well. And it's the same kind of openness that you were talking about that in this case allowed us to meet, right? In part because, who knows, it is that, again, like the hierarchy thing, for example, like if we were to use a hierarchy model, it would be a little bit like, we start out not on each other's hierarchy remotely. Yeah. And as a result of the meeting, well, we're entering each other's orbit by some means, right? And so in that sense, it's a bit like, who knows where this will go, right? Like maybe in 3 years we work together on something. We don't get to know these things. And part of that, which is also the same reason why, like, when Kurt mentioned that, I'm like, I mean, I'm tired, but I'm open to a kind of thing like this.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. I think that's probably a good place for us to leave it, because I can see that they were eyeing us earlier. But no, I really appreciate it. Thanks for, taking your time. Obviously, we don't really know each other that much. We had like a 10-minute conversation.
Yeah, now we've known each other for maybe 2 hours.
2 hours. But yeah, no, I mean, like, I really respect what you do. I think you're doing really cool stuff.
And as I mentioned too, same here.
Yeah, and like, I don't know where the future leads us, but it's been really cool chatting with you. And yeah, I hope this leads to some kind of friendship or whatever.
Yeah. It shall be whatever it is, and if we keep remaining open, then we're basically maximally exposing the possibilities for, like, good things, if you will.
100%. So yeah, just massive thank you to you, man.
Yeah, and
And then is there anything you want to shout out? Closing words?
Let me think for 10 seconds.
Take your time.
Getting a slice into people's lives is actually, I think, so precious, you know? Hope you do more of these.
Thank you. And I hope so too, for sure. And then, I guess, closing segment question for you. What would the world you dream of be like?
I think I described a lot of that during this conversation already.
Just condensing it.
Yeah. A world where relationships can be taken more seriously and recognize how precious they are. That without them, we basically die. I think oftentimes the very notion of, like your loneliness thing, oftentimes the very notion of us being cut away from each other, which both forms the loneliness, is also the very reason why sometimes things don't work out for us, or we don't understand what's going on. And so, yeah, something relationships would be nice.
Nice. Well, thank you. That's been great.